The case occurred in Haikou, the capital city of Hainan Province, China. Haikou is a large coastal city known for its stunning natural scenery. Early in the morning of April 14, 2011, a young woman named Luo was jogging along a coastal road in Meilan District, Haikou. Suddenly, she noticed a strange object on the seawall near the beach. Initially, Luo thought it was just a plastic mannequin, but as she got closer, she was shocked to discover it was a decapitated naked male body. About an hour later, the Meilan District Criminal Investigation Team arrived at the scene. At that time, the male body was lying on its back on the concrete surface of the seawall. Around the neck area, forensic technicians found splattered blood, leading them to believe that this was the primary crime scene. However, further forensic examination revealed some perplexing findings. First, the victim's body appeared exceptionally clean, with no external injuries except for the neck wound. Under the body, technicians found a t-shirt and a pair of shorts. In the pocket of the shorts, they found 200 yuan in cash. This indicated that robbery was not the motive for the murder. But what puzzled the Haikou police was why the victim was completely naked. Since the victim had no visible signs of trauma, forensic technicians speculated that the victim might have voluntarily removed all of his clothing. But what could have prompted such peculiar behavior? Could it have been for swimming in the sea? Although the Haikou police were unable to draw definitive conclusions at that time, they surmised, based on the victim's nudity, that the perpetrator and the victim likely shared a close relationship and that deep animosity might have existed between them. Because the victim's head was missing, the Haikou police could only search both sides of the seawall thoroughly. Approximately 10 feet away from the body, beneath a row of seawalls, forensic technicians finally found what they were looking for. Upon matching the cut marks, they confirmed it was the decapitated head of the male victim. However, his true identity remained a mystery. Due to the effects of sea breezes and tides, forensic technicians found almost no analyzable crime scene evidence. The only clue they uncovered was a small fruit knife hidden behind a concrete pillar near the body. Because the knife had been submerged in seawater, forensic technicians found no traces of blood or fingerprints on the handle or blade. Could this small knife have been the murder weapon? Judging by the clean cut on the victim's neck, investigators noted that performing such a precise incision was not an easy task. It would require either professional training in human anatomy or significant skill, possibly from a chef or a butcher. Based on the body, the severed head, and the clothing found at the scene, forensic technicians reconstructed the victim's full body image. The victim was 6 feet tall and appeared to be between 40 and 50 years old. A more detailed autopsy revealed several additional critical findings. First, traces of seawater and sea salt were found on the victim's skin, indicating that the victim had been swimming naked in the sea before being murdered. Second, the time of death was estimated by forensic experts to be between midnight and 1 a.m., the night before the body was discovered. However, this time frame only deepened the Haikou police's confusion. The crime scene was located more than 6 miles from downtown Haikou, in a remote area rarely visited compared to common swimming spots. Why did the victim accompany the suspect to such a secluded place and go swimming late at night? To solve this strange murder case quickly, the police printed tens of thousands of portraits of the victim and notified police stations across Haikou to assist in the investigation, checking for any missing persons reports that might match. Simultaneously, investigators in the vicinity of the crime scene went door to door to gather information and distributed more than 20,000 flyers seeking information about the victim. 4 days after the crime, a local real estate broker identified the victim. According to the broker, Liu Moxin, the victim was Wu Kuan-yu, a 50-year-old man from Liaoning Province. About 4 months earlier, Kuan-yu had hired Liu to sell a house. Since Kuan-yu insisted on completing the transaction quickly, Liu remembered him clearly. Using the real estate transaction records, the investigators obtained Kuan-yu's registered address in his hometown in Liaoning. They decided to split into 2 teams. One traveled to Liaoning to gather information about Kuan-yu's background, while the other focused on investigating his social connections in Haikou. The team in Haikou soon located a fellow Liaoning native, Li Mokang, who knew Wu Kuan-yu. According to Li, Kuan Yu had divorced his wife in 2001, about 10 years earlier. In March 2006, Kuan Yu opted for an early retirement package, taking 200,000 won in savings and moving alone to Haikou, leaving his daughter behind with her mother in their hometown. Lee Mo-kang said that after moving to Haikou, Kuan Yu led a semi-retired life and quickly adapted to the city's lifestyle. However, due to family and work commitments, the two rarely met. Lee only learned of Kuan Yu's murder when approached by the Haikou police. Lee admitted he didn't know much about Kuan Yu's personal life, but recalled one puzzling detail. Around July 2010, 9 months before the murder, Kuan Yu unexpectedly called Lee to say, "I'm getting married." However, Kuan Yu didn't share any details about the person he intended to marry. According to the police investigation, there were no marriage registration records for Kuan Yu in Hainan province. If what Lee said was true, Kuan Yu's behavior was indeed unusual. Why would someone planning to marry and settle down in Haikou suddenly decide to sell his only home? Where did Kuan Yu live, and what did he experience in the 3 months following the sale of his house? Based on information from the real estate broker, Haikou police decided to investigate Wu Kuan Yu's former residence. They uncovered a strange story from the property management office. Kuan Yu's former home was located near the Jingdu building in Meilan District, Haikou. However, since the murder occurred 4 months after he sold the house, investigators could not retrieve surveillance footage from that period. According to the property management staff, Kuan Yu had previously caused a disturbance in the building. The management revealed that Kuan Yu had attempted to set his own house on fire using gasoline. Fortunately, they intervened in time and reported the incident to the local police. While this extreme act shocked the management and residents, the real reason behind Kuan Yu's behavior remained unknown. To clarify the situation, investigators visited the local police station to learn more about the incident. According to the records, the arson attempt involved Kuan Yu's ex-girlfriend, Xiao Wei. The root of the issue traced back to 2006, 5 years prior. After moving to Haikou and settling in, Kuan Yu was introduced to Xiao Wei through friends, and they quickly became a couple. Later, Xiao Wei's sister wanted to open a restaurant, so Xiao Wei used her house and car as collateral to borrow 200,000 yuan from Kuan Yu. The restaurant failed and had to close, leaving Xiao Wei and her sister unable to repay Kuan Yu in a short time. This financial strain led to heated conflicts between the couple. Out of frustration and anger, Kuan Yu resorted to threatening Xiao Wei by attempting to burn the house. With no other options, Xiao Wei eventually transferred the ownership of her house to Wu Kuan Yu. In other words, the house that Kuan Yu hurriedly sold 4 months before the murder originally belonged to Xiao Wei. Analyzing the timeline further, in July 2010, Kuan Yu called his fellow townsman Lee Mo-kang, saying he was about to get married. As expected, the likely person Kuan Yu planned to marry was Xiao Wei. Yet less than 6 months later, Kuan Yu sold Xiao Wei's house. Multiple signs suggested that financial and emotional disputes existed between the two. Therefore, Xiao Wei became a prime suspect in Kuan Yu's mysterious death. At this point, investigators received another crucial lead. During a broader investigation, a witness came forward. At a food processing plant about 1.2 miles from the crime scene, a security guard reported seeing a figure resembling a woman walking along the seawall at around 1 a.m. on the night of the murder. The figure was moving northward, away from the crime scene. Unfortunately, since the seawall lacked streetlights, the guard could not clearly see the woman's physical features. However, based on the silhouette, he estimated the woman to be fairly tall. Notably, Xiao Wei, who stands 5 feet 9 inches, is considered tall for a woman in China. To determine whether Xiao Wei was involved in the crime, investigators located her for questioning. According to Xiao Wei, on April 12, 2011, 2 days before the murder, she had traveled with colleagues on a work trip to Sanya and did not return to Haikou until the 3rd day after Kuan Yu's death. Her colleagues corroborated this alibi. Lacking a solid alibi for the time frame, Haikou police decided to temporarily rule out Xiao Wei as the perpetrator. By this point, 5 days had passed since the crime, and investigators focused on thoroughly examining Wu Kuan Yu's social connections. At this time, forensic experts uncovered a new lead. A more detailed forensic analysis determined that approximately 5 hours before his death, around 7 to 8 p.m. on the night of the murder, Kuan Yu had consumed a large amount of sleeping pills. Under normal circumstances, if Kuan Yu had a habit of using sleeping pills, he would typically take them before going to bed. However, the timing indicated by the forensic findings coincided with his dinner. This suggested that someone likely gave Kuan Yu a large dose of sleeping pills during his meal. The person capable of doing so must have had a close relationship with him, possibly even living together. Based on this theory, Haikou police shifted their investigation to focus on Kuan Yu's living arrangements before his death. Since Kuan Yu had sold his old home before the murder and investigators found no records of a new property purchase, they deduced that he must have been renting a residence. The clothes left at the scene indicated that Kuan Yu was dressed in casual loungewear that evening. This suggested that he had left directly from his home before arriving at the crime scene. Therefore, the house Kuan Yu rented was likely located near the scene. Investigators decided to treat the crime scene as the focal point and expanded their search to a radius of about 6 miles. All available officers were dispatched for a comprehensive canvass of the area. Around the same time, the team investigating Kuan Yu's hometown in Liaoning sent back a significant update. It turned out that shortly before the murder, Kuan Yu's daughter, Wu Molin, had traveled alone to Haikou to visit her father and stayed at his home for a few days. Investigators brought Wu Molin back to Haikou to assist with the investigation. According to Wu Molin, although she could not recall the exact address of her father's residence, she remembered certain characteristics of the street. The Haikou police drove her around the surrounding areas, and after detailed descriptions and on-site guidance, they eventually identified a rental house Kuan Yu had occupied in Lingxia village, located about 2 miles from the crime scene. Wu Molin also recalled noticing some women's household items in the rented home during her visit. However, during the week she stayed there, she did not see any unfamiliar women visiting the house. She never questioned her father about the women's belongings. At this stage of the investigation, Haikou police were increasingly confident that Kuan Yu had been living with a woman prior to his death. This mysterious woman was now the prime suspect in the case. On April 20th, 2011, 6 days after the murder occurred, Haikou police began a thorough search of Wu Kuan Yu's residence. In the kitchen, forensic experts found some strange white powder on the floor. This substance did not resemble salt, sugar, or flour, but appeared to be crushed pills. Subsequent testing confirmed it to be the components of a sleeping pill. Additionally, similar traces were discovered in food residue left in a pot in the kitchen. The chemical composition of the sleeping pills matched those found in Kuan Yu's internal organs during the autopsy. In an open wardrobe in the living room, investigators found several items of women's clothing. Based on the size of these garments, they concluded that the owner must be a tall woman. Forensic experts also found a pair of gold earrings and a necklace on the coffee table in the living room. While these items did not reveal the suspect's identity, they led Haikou police to believe that the mysterious woman had not gone far and might return. As a result, investigators decided to use a stakeout strategy. They stationed 2 officers to monitor the rented house, waiting for the mysterious woman to reappear. Meanwhile, they also visited the property management office to gather more information. According to the property management records, the property owner was Zhao Jun, a 53-year-old man from Datong City, Shaanxi Province. Zhao Jun had purchased the house 3 years earlier, in 2009. Using the phone number provided by the property management office, investigators tried to contact Zhao Jun, but his phone was consistently turned off. This unusual situation raised the investigators' suspicions. They contacted the police in Datong, Shaanxi Province for assistance. With their help, the team managed to reach Zhao Jun's family. According to his relatives, Zhao Jun was unmarried and lived alone in Hainan. They had not spoken to him by phone for over 6 months. Investigators then turned their attention to Zhao Jun's social connections, hoping to find clues about the mysterious woman through his acquaintances. After several days of investigation, they discovered that Zhao Jun had been involved in a legal dispute with a woman named Gong. The subject of the dispute was none other than the house Kuan Yu had rented. The lawsuit took place in early March 2011, about a month and a half before Kuan Yu's murder. According to court records, Zhao Jun had borrowed 300,000 yuan from Gong Yunquan and used the house in Lingxia village as collateral for the loan. When Zhao Jun was unable to repay the debt, Gong sued him in court. The court ultimately ruled in Gong's favor, awarding her ownership of the house. In other words, the house rented by Wu Kuan-yu was legally owned by Gong. Evidence from the rented house indicated that Kuan-yu had been living there until his death. Based on this, Haikou police surmised that Gong and Kuan-yu likely had contact, and she might hold valuable information about Kuan-yu and the mysterious woman. During the investigation into Gong, investigators uncovered a startling and unusual detail. According to the debt documents provided by Gong, the court had ruled the rental property to be transferred to her. However, during the ownership transfer process, Gong used a photo of Kuan-yu to forge an identification card in Zhao Jun's name. Her plan was for Kuan-yu to impersonate Zhao Jun and transfer the house's ownership to her name. This impersonation attempt was later discovered by the housing authority. This meant Gong Yunquan had not legally acquired ownership of Zhao Jun's house and was instead implicated in document forgery along with Kuan-yu. Shortly after this forgery attempt, Kuan-yu was murdered by the seaside. Clearly, Gong had a possible motive for the crime. Could she be the mysterious woman that Haikou police had been diligently pursuing? Gong's personal records revealed she was originally from Dalian, Liaoning province, the same hometown as Kuan-yu. What raised further suspicion was Gong's background. At 46 years old, she was a former nurse. While seemingly trivial, this detail immediately alarmed investigators. A woman with medical experience aligned with the forensic team's earlier suspicions. At this point, the case's web of relationships grew increasingly complex. 2 men connected to Gong were involved. One was murdered, and the other had been missing for over 6 months. Yet, Haikou police still had no concrete leads on Gong's whereabouts. On the 7th day after the murder, investigators decided to send officers to Dalian, Liaoning province, Gong's hometown, to gather information. Strangely, Gong's family had no way of contacting her either. According to her ex-husband, Gong Yunquan had divorced him in 1996. After the divorce, Gong, known for her pride, left her hometown to pursue her career. Initially, she maintained contact with her son, but over the past decade, she had cut off almost all communication with her family. No one knew where Gong was hiding. However, in the early hours of April 22, 2011, 9 days after the murder, the lights in the rented house where Kuan-yu had lived suddenly turned on. Detecting this unusual activity, the officers staking out the house immediately moved in. At the scene, they found a middle-aged woman holding a suitcase, preparing to leave. Upon confirming her identity, the woman was revealed to be none other than Gong, the primary suspect. Confronted by Haikou police, Gong lowered her head slightly, her expression tense and nervous. During her subsequent interrogation, Gong quickly confessed to murdering Kuan-yu. According to her statement, she and Kuan-yu had met on a dating website in November 2010. Sharing a common Northeastern heritage, they quickly developed a romantic relationship. At the time, Wu Kuan-yu had already acquired the house from his ex-girlfriend Xiao Wei and was living there with Gong. Initially, their relationship seemed to progress well. However, Kuan-yu was entirely unaware that his new girlfriend was an obsessive gambler. According to Gong, she had lost all her savings and accrued significant debts through speculative trading in futures markets. To recover her losses, Gong convinced Kuan-yu to sell the house in Haikou, promising they would use the money to invest and make a fortune together. In early January 2011, Wu Kuan-yu sold his apartment in the Jingdu building and handed over all the proceeds to Gong for futures trading investments. Shortly after, Gong lost everything. Seeing his savings wiped out, Kuan-yu repeatedly pressured Gong to repay him. At this point, a desperate Gong Yunquan devised another scheme to make money. She first brought Kuan-yu to a rental house she had previously lived in and told him that the property's owner, Zhao Jun, was a solitary man who had died in a car accident 6 months earlier. Gong proposed a plan to fabricate a legal dispute to take ownership of Zhao Jun's house. She convinced Kuan-yu, whom she described as a greedy and self-serving man, to participate in the scheme. The pair first forged a debt agreement stating that Zhao Jun owed Gong 300,000 yuan and had used the house in Lingxia village as collateral for the loan. Then, Guan Yu used his own photo to create a fake identification card under Zhao Jun's name. Armed with the forged debt document and fake ID, Gong, acting as the creditor, sued Guan Yu, posing as Zhao Jun, in court. Through out-of-court mediation, the court quickly ruled in favor of Gong, granting her the house in Lingxia village. However, during the subsequent property transfer process, the housing authority discovered the fake ID used by Guan Yu to impersonate Zhao Jun. This meant that, despite winning the lawsuit, Gong failed to acquire ownership of Zhao Jun's house. Gong later told investigators that Guan Yu was a petty and truly unscrupulous man. After their impersonation plan failed, he became furious and began frequently threatening her. Initially, Gong said she tried to endure his behavior, but Guan Yu escalated his threats, demanding repayment within 2 days and warning that he would kill her if she didn't comply. Feeling cornered, Gong decided to strike first. On the night of the murder, Gong laced Wu Kuan-Yu's dinner with sleeping pills and then sat with him to finish the entire meal. Around 10 p.m., as was their routine, the two went to the beach to swim. Gong's plan was for Guan Yu to succumb to the effects of the sleeping pills while swimming and drown. However, things did not go as planned. The sleeping pills didn't take effect until Guan Yu returned to shore. As he fell unconscious by the seaside, Gong used a fruit knife she had brought with her and, with precise technique, killed Guan Yu. To conceal Guan Yu's identity, Gong removed his head and threw it into the sea. However, her gruesome plan failed when the head was pushed back to shore by the waves and became lodged beneath the seawall. What Gong didn't anticipate was that during her absence from Haikou, Guan Yu had arranged for his daughter, Wu Melin, to stay in the rental house. It was Wu Melin's assistance that led Haikou police to the house and eventually to Gong's capture. After 8 days and nights of relentless investigation, the case of the headless body by the sea was finally solved. However, one lingering mystery remained. What had happened to Zhao Jun, the property owner? According to Gong, Zhao Jun had died in a car accident before she met Guan Yu. Yet, investigators reviewed all traffic accident records in Haikou for that year and found no information regarding Zhao Jun's death. Furthermore, a search of the National Missing Persons database yielded no clues about Zhao Jun. As an unmarried middle-aged man who had cut ties with his family for years, it was conceivable that his disappearance might go unnoticed by relatives who, unaware of his absence, did not file a report. From the perspective of the investigators, Zhao Jun's mysterious disappearance raised numerous suspicions. During Gong's interrogation, investigators repeatedly questioned her about Zhao Jun's whereabouts, but her responses were vague and inconsistent. Initially, Gong claimed Zhao Jun had died in a car accident, but later, she said he had returned to his hometown in Shanxi to work in the coal industry. Clearly, Gong was concealing some unknown secrets behind Zhao Jun's disappearance. Due to a lack of concrete evidence, the investigators could not compel Gong to reveal the truth. They focused on Zhao Jun's identity and financial activities to gather more clues. By reviewing Zhao Jun's bank card transaction history, investigators uncovered an unusual finding. At a stock trading office near East Lake in Haikou, Zhao Jun had previously opened an account. According to staff at the trading office, Zhao Jun frequently visited the exchange to monitor stock market trends. However, on June 18, 2010, Zhao Jun's stock trading activities suddenly ceased. His account still contained cash and stocks, but for more than 10 months, no transactions had occurred. For a middle-aged man with a habit of trading stocks, this abrupt cessation of activity was highly unusual. The situation became even more suspicious given Gong and Guan Yu's attempt to forge debt documents and seize Zhao Jun's house. Their actions suggested they were confident Zhao Jun would never return to expose their scheme. This led Haikou police to a bold hypothesis. Gong and Wu Kuan-Yu might have murdered Zhao Jun. The primary motive for the alleged crime was to seize Zhao Jun's house to offset Gong's financial losses from failed stock market trades. Acting on this theory, investigators interrogated Gong once again. At first, Gong adamantly denied the police's suspicions. However, 2 days later, investigators broke through her psychological defenses. Gong confessed that her relationship with Zhao Jun was not that of a tenant and landlord. In early 2006, she met Zhao Jun in Kunming, Yunnan province. The two quickly became romantically involved, and about a year later, Gong moved with Zhao Jun to Haikou, Hainan province. Having earned substantial profits from stock trading, Zhao Jun purchased a house in Lingxia village where he lived with Gong. During this period, Gong became increasingly obsessed with the idea of quick wealth. According to her confession, Gong was consumed by the dream of financial freedom without the need to work, hoping to achieve it through speculative futures trading. However, within less than 2 months, she lost all her savings. In contrast, Zhao Jun had a calm demeanor and consistently made profits through stock investments. Taking advantage of this, Gong used every method to persuade Zhao Jun to lend her 700,000 yuan. As you might expect, Gong lost the entire loan in the stock market once again. After losing the money, Zhao Jun began demanding repayment from Gong. He even offered to reduce the amount owed, asking her to repay only 400,000 yuan. However, Gong was completely unable to pay, leading to constant arguments between the two. On June 17, 2010, another heated argument and physical altercation broke out over the debt. According to Gong, in a moment of uncontrolled rage, she grabbed a heavy pot lid and struck Zhao Jun on the head. Unexpectedly, Zhao Jun collapsed and became unresponsive. Based on Gong's account of where she disposed of the body, Haikou police later excavated human remains. Through DNA analysis and comparisons with family members, forensic experts confirmed the remains belonged to Zhao Jun, who had been missing for over 10 months. Whether Zhao Jun's death was truly accidental, as Gong claimed, or something more sinister, only Gong knows the full truth. By now, it is clear that the conflicts between the three individuals centered on debts and property. Driven by greed and desperation, the villainous woman Gong ultimately caused the deaths of 2 men who once cared for her. On February 2, 2012, the case of the mysterious body found near the seawall was brought to trial at the Intermediate People's Court in Haikou. The trial concluded with a death sentence for Gong Yongquan, a woman consumed by greed and manipulation. In the pursuit of money and personal gain, Gong took the lives of 2 men who had loved her. This tragic story serves as a stark warning about the devastating consequences of greed and selfishness.